alone for no reason in the middle of the night. But he was also forced to make breakfast for someone the next morning. Jingdian, filled with resentment, whether intentionally or unintentionally, actually dropped the noodles in before the water boiled, then threw the noodles in. And now, how could anyone possibly eat breakfast cooked into mush? This made the little demon girl furious again, kicking and punching. Meanwhile, Grandpa Dian, unaware of all this, was happily heading home. Last night, he had chatted with old friends all night, and a rare guest had come to his house. So the old man was in a great mood. However, as he reached a fork in the road, he suddenly remembered the task entrusted by Old Poison. Going left would take him straight home, while going right led to the rootless spring. He happened to have his wine gourd with him, so he thought he might as well pick some up while he was there, to avoid forgetting later. Thinking of this, Grandpa Dian turned and headed down the path to the right. It wasn't far, just about the time it takes to smoke a pipe. But what he didn't expect was, early in the morning, there were two little kids standing by the rootless spring. Getting closer, he realized the two kids were Qinglong and Shenghu. How strange. Why are these two here so early in the morning drinking rootless water? Puzzled, Grandpa Dian noticed the two boys each had a mouthful of water. They walked to the side, and then spat it out onto a stone. This action completely baffled Grandpa Dian. What are these little rascals up to? He couldn't help but take a few steps forward, and then he saw a like-pao toad sitting on the stone. Even stranger, the two kids were reaching out their hands to the toad, asking for money. This was truly bizarre. Grandpa Dian approached them and asked what they were doing. Seeing it was third Grandpa, the kids became even more playful. They said they were spraying water on this big toad, so it would spit out money. At these words, Grandpa Dian was completely taken aback. Curious, he then examined the like-pao toad in front of him. No wonder it looked so familiar. It's Yaojin. Speaking of which, this was the first time the old man had seen it this year. He hadn't realized Yaojin's hibernation period had become so long. Seeing a familiar face, Yaojin croaked a greeting. The kids watched with wide eyes. They were surprised third Grandpa knew this toad, and that it even had a name, Yaojin. No wonder it spat out money. Hearing this, Grandpa Dian chuckled and explained. Speaking of age, Yaojin is old enough to be your grandfather's generation. All the older folks in the village know it. It's quite a toad with spiritual cultivation. Look, it already has 5 petals on its forehead. When it cultivates 9 petals, it will be complete. Listening to Grandpa Dian's explanation, Qinglong and Shenghu were filled with awe. But even though it was a magical creature, they didn't forget their original plan. They planned to earn some more from Yaojin to buy popsicles. With that, the two boys ran back to the rootless spring. One mouthful for you, one for me, filling their mouths until their cheeks bulged. Then they immediately ran back to Yaojin and spat the water out with a poof. Normally, this kind of behavior would be considered disrespectful, but Yaojin remained unfazed. Of course, a hint of disgust on its little face was still visible. Then, predictably, it was time for the money-asking part again. Yaojin grumbled at the kids for a while, before croaking and spitting out a coin. Seeing this, Qinglong and Shenghu instantly beamed. They picked it up and saw, wow, it was still a 1 yuan coin. Qinglong was very pleased. He immediately handed the coin to his younger brother, then held out his hand again, ready for a second coin. The reason was simple. They were 2 people doing the work, so naturally, they deserved 2 rewards. This clearly baffled Yaojin. It grumbled again for a while, and then reluctantly spat out a second coin. The 2 kids were overjoyed, and quickly picked it up. But strangely, this second coin was noticeably lighter and thinner. Something was wrong. Looking closer, they realized it was marked 5 cents. The two little brothers who had never seen such a treasure were stunned. In their minds, anything not in their picture books was fake. Qinglong got a little angry and accused Yaojin of being unfair. Yaojin was clearly upset by this. Fortunately, Grandpa Dian, seeing things going wrong, quickly intervened. He sensed something was wrong because he knew. Yaojin used these coins, imbued with human aura, to ward off heavenly tribulations. But he didn't understand why Yaojin would spit out these life-saving treasures. This Likebao toad was over 50 years old and could understand human speech. The older generation in the village had all seen it and named it Yaojin. Yet, unexpectedly, this toad, old enough to be a grandfather, was being bullied by two little kids from the village today. He learned from the kids that as long as they sprayed rootless water at Yaojin, it would spit out coins. So they were trying to get from Yaojin enough money to buy popsicles. Grandpa Dian knew something was amiss. These coins with human aura were what Yaojin used to ward off heavenly tribulations. How could it spit them out so easily? He couldn't bear to watch any longer and decided to subtly intervene to get Qinglong and Shenghu to return the coins. But what he didn't expect was the whole thing had started with Yaojin. It had first spat water at the kids, and the kids had playfully retaliated by spitting water back. Then, as they were playing around, they discovered Yaojin would spit out coins. Grandpa Dian suddenly understood. It turned out that since yesterday, these two kids had been using this method to get money for popsicles. The old man was a bit exasperated. In our village, you're the only ones who dare to trade with a toad. Just you two. But no matter how he looked at it, it wasn't really the kids' fault. This couldn't continue. After a moment's thought, Grandpa Dian had an idea. He took out 2 blue yuan notes and exchanged them for the coins in the overjoyed children's hands. Unlike the children's delighted faces, Grandpa Dian felt a little heavy-hearted. He placed the 2 coins in front of Yaojin, signaling it to take them back. After all, these coins would become increasingly harder to find. Qinglong and Shenghu were very curious. Are these coins really important? Grandpa Dian nodded and said that when heaven thundered to purge evil spirits, Yaojin could use the human aura on the coins to avoid disaster. The kids were amazed, but then they thought of something else. Is Yaojin a bad toad? Otherwise, why would heaven strike it with lightning? The old man didn't know how to explain it. He was afraid they wouldn't understand, so he compared it to taking a test. Even though Yaojin was a good toad, it still had to pass this test to level up. The children listened with sympathy and started to feel sorry for it. Then, the old man told them about the origin of the coins again, explaining that these coins couldn't be stolen or robbed, but only found by chance. So for Yaojin, it probably couldn't find more than a few in decades. Speaking of this, the old man couldn't understand why Yaojin would suddenly use this method to give away the coins it had painstakingly collected. Yaojin croaked at him in response. The 2 kids couldn't understand, but the old man understood. He reprimanded, speechless. Don't just focus on temporary pleasure and damage your cultivation because of it. As soon as the old man finished speaking, Yaojin suddenly stretched out a leg. The sudden scene stunned the 2 kids. What's going on? Is Yaojin going to play rock, paper, scissors with us? Is there a problem? Seeing this, the old man was immediately alarmed because fire marks appeared on Yaojin's paws. Hearing that the old man saw his injury, Yaojin simply stretched out all 4 legs. They were covered in fire marks. The old man frowned deeply. Could it be that you're being scorched by the earth's energy? Yaojin grunted and nodded. Only now did Master Dian finally understand. It turned out Yaojin wanted to use rootless water to cool down. Qinglong was puzzled by this. Why doesn't Yaojin jump into that puddle on the rock itself? Why does it have to be us spraying it? This made the old man laugh. He didn't expect Qinglong to be so thoughtful. However, the location of this rootless spring is a treasure land left by great fortune. Although you two can come and go freely, it's a forbidden zone for Yaojin. It doesn't dare to get too close, so it can only ask you to help out. But this is clearly just a stone puddle, just rainwater collected on rainy days. Why does Grandpa 3 say this is a spring? The old man explained with a smile, saying that this is indeed a spring. The ancestors of the entire village have been blessed by it for generations. It doesn't freeze in winter and doesn't dry up in droughts. Whether for healing or exorcising demons, it can play a significant role. So, today, your spring water will be very helpful for Yaojin. After hearing these magical stories, the two kids were naturally satisfied. Unfortunately, the 2 bills in their pockets had long been itching them. They clamored to buy more popsicles. The old man laughed heartily, admonishing them to eat less. Watching the 2 boys skip away, the old man's expression gradually became serious. Yaojin's unusual behavior today, wasn't it also coming out to warn people? There's an old saying, when toad's belly grows rust spots, drought will spread across thousands of miles. This is a very ominous sign. Last time we talked about Jingdian, this kid, used warm water to cook noodles to entertain a millionaire-level young female writer. Not only did he anger her so much she couldn't eat breakfast, but he also got himself beaten up early in the morning. Finally, with no other choice, the two had to go to the village store. This meal can be considered very lavish. It's meticulously prepared authentic pickled cabbage noodles. But the little demon girl was extremely unhappy. She directly accused Jingdian of disgracing the reputation of hospitable Shandong with this action. The first meal for a guest is instant noodles. Jingdian, who didn't care at all, was too lazy to pay attention to her. As usual, he charged the cost of this meal to his grandpa's account. Upon hearing the word grandpa, the little demon girl suddenly had an idea. She told Jingdian to quickly call his grandpa and have him come home, and not to treat her like she's not a guest. Hearing this, Jingdian belatedly realized, although when grandpa is away, he doesn't like to bother him with phone calls rashly. But now that a she-devil has come to the house, how could he possibly handle it? Hearing that this guy actually called her a she-devil to her face, the little demon girl's anger instantly flared up. Fortunately, Jing's main strategy was to accept fate and give up, and he prepared to go home after eating, and thus he avoided a disaster. However, if they had left a minute later, they wouldn't have missed the 2-person team buying popsicles. On the way home, the little demon girl kept complaining incessantly, saying the village was backward, not even a restaurant. Then she said the village chief was brainless, not even knowing to develop a tourism project. Jingdian didn't take any of it in at all. He kept muttering, not listening, turtle chanting scriptures, ignoring completely. But just then, that rascal Zhuir suddenly had a crooked idea. It remembered that today was the transition from early to mid-month, and on nearby Ghost King Ridge, Yin and Yang were reversing precisely today. Thinking this way, wouldn't our chance to avenge our previous humiliation come? As soon as this idea came up, Jingdian couldn't help but be lost in thought. He didn't even hear the little demon girl calling for a long time. When he turned around and saw the demon girl's unfriendly face, his heart suddenly settled. He repeatedly confirmed with Zhuir that after taking this she-devil to Ghost King Ridge, could he take advantage of home field advantage to deal with her? To this, Zhuir patted his chest and guaranteed it, saying that he had been around Ghost King Ridge for hundreds of years. He knew what he was doing. With these words, Jingdian finally felt relieved. Coincidentally, he heard the little demon girl asking about fun places nearby. Jingdian instantly had an idea. He opened his mouth and changed Ghost King Ridge to Fairy Maiden Ridge. He also said that lucky people could meet fairies descending to Earth there. Although the demon girl felt it was a bit strange, Jingdian didn't give her time to think at all. He turned his head and said, "That place is very far. It's several miles away. If you think it's too tiring, then forget I said anything." As soon as these words came out, who could bear it? The little demon girl kicked him without a second thought. "Go, take me there now." Obviously, this simple trick of reverse psychology had worked perfectly. Just don't know. After arriving at Ghost King Ridge, how does Jingdian plan to deal with her? And Master Dian, completely unaware of this, was still chatting with Likebao Yaojin in the woods. This Likebao named Yaojin was also obedient, and swallowed the steel marbles it had spat out back into its stomach. The old man was very pleased to see this. He planned to find some more and bring them to it after returning home. But that's a story for later. What's more important now is the message Yaojin gave him. Looking at it this way, this old bone of mine also needs to perk up. Thinking of this, the old man greeted Yaojin and prepared to go get some rootless spring water. This was something Old Poison specifically instructed him to do. Naturally, he had to hurry and get it done. Master Dian came to the stone platform and bowed repeatedly, hoping that his taking water would be approved by the gods. Then he pulled out the stopper and pressed the empty gourd into the rootless spring. It was truly magical. The bottom of the gourd had no cracks at all, but with just a simple press, the rootless spring water actually seeped in with gurgling sounds. The old man was overjoyed to see this. Laughing, he said, "It's working. It's working." In no time, it was filled with more than half a gourd. Listening to the gurgling sound inside, the old man was very happy. He bowed repeatedly to the stone platform in front of him to express his thanks. But just then, an unusual movement suddenly occurred behind him. Yaojin, who was beside him, was the first to notice the abnormality. Seeing a stranger approaching, it croaked and jumped into the bushes. Master Dian was also suddenly startled by the warning. When he turned around, he realized the person was an unfamiliar young man, and this young man simply greeted him, and then asked the old man if this was the location of the rootless spring. Hearing this, Master Dian knew he couldn't deny it, so while nodding, he probed the other person's identity. The young man didn't hide anything, saying he was from the neighboring county, because his grandma had shingles. So he had to come here to ask for some spring water to take back to treat her illness. Master Dian didn't know if his words were true or false, nor did he have the right to inquire further. He could only remind the young man that to take rootless water, he had to use a container made of grass or wood. Hearing this, the young man raised the bamboo tube in his hand, saying he had already prepared it. Seeing this scene, the old man didn't say anything more and prepared to leave. But he hadn't walked a few steps when he felt the young man behind him suddenly stop, not knowing if he had encountered some resistance or what. The young man turned his head and called out to Master Dian, saying he had something he wanted to discuss. Master Dian, hearing this, opened his mouth slightly, asked with a smile, "Oh, what is it? Tell me about it." And the result seemed to be as expected. That young man wanted to buy the gourd of rootless water he had just obtained. Chen Jingdian tricked a young girl in her prime into the deep mountains and forests, preparing to invite her to feel the love of Mother Earth. The reason was also very simple. He just wanted to get revenge for last night's kick to the groin. But who would have thought? Before he could even launch this kick, that girl disappeared from right in front of him. Fortunately, Jingdian, who had seen a lot, did not panic, because from the beginning, He knew that Ghost King Ridge was not a good place. He tricked the little demon girl over here by calling it Fairy Ridge, just intending to simply vent his anger. Moreover, before setting off, Juir had already told him, today is the day when Ghost King Ridge reverses Yin and Yang. But he didn't expect. This little demon girl was not to be trifled with either. As soon as they arrived at the periphery of Ghost King Ridge, the little demon girl sensed something was wrong. This place was full of yin energy, and the aura was extraordinary. The probability of encountering a fairy was negligible. Conversely, encountering ghosts and evils was very likely. Of course, she could have such intuition entirely because of herself. Having been in the Feng Shui locations of the dense forests of western Hunan and the northern mountains, had come into contact with this extremely mysterious great wilderness authority realm. However, even though she already knew Chen Jingdian was tricking her, she still excitedly went inside. Therefore, this scene directly confused Chen Jingdian. If he had known it would be like this, he might as well have directly said, "There are ghosts here, come and play," would have been more straightforward. But this is also good. Juir watched with glee, stating directly that this girl's personality was very good. It liked her very much, but liking is liking. The original intention of revenge cannot be forgotten. So, this guy directly targeted the tightly wrapped, perky buttocks in front of him. Then, Chen Jingdian found that his feet had lost control, but he didn't expect. He had just gotten into position to deliver a fierce kick, when the little demon girl suddenly disappeared from in front of him, and the process was like passing through some kind of barrier. Juir was also dumbfounded at the sight. It also didn't expect today's yin domain to be adjusted so far out. Seeing Chen Jingdian was a little flustered. Juir comforted him, saying that the girl could still come out. Just wait until the yin domain recedes. To put it simply, the advance and retreat of the yin domain is like the tide of the sea. Just wait and it will pass. However, before the yin domain recedes, if this girl encounters any evil spirits inside, it would be hard to say. Good heavens. As soon as these words came out, Chen Jingdian's previously relieved heart instantly jumped up again. If he caused trouble because of this and his grandfather found out, his butt would definitely be spanked. Helplessly, he gritted his teeth and took a big step, and also stepped into the yin domain. In an instant, he felt like he was in an ice cellar. All the hairs on his body stood on end. But before he could react, a small hand suddenly slapped over his mouth, then pressed him down again, and he uncontrollably went down. It turned out, after accidentally entering the yin domain, the little demon girl immediately became vigilant to avoid Jingdian's loud and reckless behavior causing trouble. She stayed in place and didn't go far. And now, she covered Jingdian's mouth, telling him not to make a sound, then quietly pointed to not far ahead. Jingdian turned his head to look, and was immediately startled. He saw in the dense forest ahead, there were actually 3 people wrapped in white, kneeling beside a stone slab, seemingly engaged in some kind of shady sacrificial activity. At the same time, Old Man Dian also encountered a little trouble here. He had just finished collecting the rootless water and was preparing to go home, but turned around and ran into a young man who claimed to be from the next county. This young man said he was seeking divine water to cure his grandmother's illness, and had prepared a section of bamboo tube in advance. But strangely, this guy, not knowing if he encountered some resistance, suddenly stopped a few steps away from the rootless water. Then Old Man Dian was stopped. That young man said he wanted to buy the rootless water that the old man had already collected. But how could such a fortuitous thing be lightly discussed for sale? Although it's both rootless water, what I've obtained may not necessarily be useful to you. Moreover, the rootless spring is right behind you. Why bother with the one in my hand? The old man spoke clearly, but the young man was not only unmoved, but instead directly took out a stack of large red bills, saying he was willing to spend 10,000 to buy it. This scene made Old Man Dian laugh. "Young man, you are a rich man, but I, old man, dare not break the rules, dare not to do business with the grace of nature." As soon as these words came out, the young man's face instantly turned gloomy, but he still didn't give up, saying he could perform a show for the old man. If the performance is good, the old man would give him the rootless water. Then, as expected, Old Man Dian laughed again. He didn't say yes or no. Just asked the young man to perform one to have a look. Just don't know what kind of strange show this grown man will give to our old man, Dian. Perform? It's really outrageous. A young man actually wants to perform a show alone for an old man. And the location is in a small forest where there's no village ahead and no shop behind. It's also strange to say. The young man's purpose in doing so is actually very simple. He just wants to exchange the rootless water in the old man's hand. However, our old man Dian is also considered an old fox. He also didn't say yes or no. Just asked the young man to perform one to have a look first. And the young man didn't seem worried about the old man cheating. Directly put the bamboo tube on the ground and showed his empty hands, letting the old man watch carefully. Then he saw him make a fist with one hand and a palm with the other, gently touching them together. Suddenly, a flutter and a beautiful big blue butterfly flew out. This scene caused the old man to exclaim in admiration repeatedly. The young man looked very proud when he saw this. He considerately told Old Man Dian, "This butterfly is real, not some kind of prop." Hearing this, the old man looked carefully, found that this butterfly was indeed a real thing, complete in every detail. And the butterfly also seemed not afraid of people at all, flying straight towards him. But what he didn't expect was that butterfly suddenly swooped down and landed on his forehead, instantly turned into a yellow talisman. The young man was overjoyed to see this. He proudly uttered a word, "Fall." Old Man Dian collapsed to the ground with a thud. This scene made the young man laugh heartily, saying he was a silly old man. But in the next moment, he couldn't laugh anymore, because Old Man Dian suddenly appeared from behind him and said with a displeased face, "It's very impolite to scare an old man like this." The sudden change scared the young man into yelling. He instinctively wanted to run away, but found that his whole body was extremely stiff. Looking down, he realized his shadow was actually pinned down by a suddenly appearing Vira pestle. And what's even more terrifying is, the old man in front of him, with a yellow talisman on his forehead, also stood up straight. "What's going on? Am I seeing ghosts?" The old man calmly explained. "The one with the talisman is your bamboo tube transformed." As soon as he finished speaking, that old man actually turned into a bamboo tube. At the same time, in the dense forest of Ghost King Ridge, Chen Jingdian and the little demon girl, who had mistakenly entered the Yin domain, were crouching and hiding in a bush, because not far away, there were 3 people dressed in white, kneeling beside a stone slab, waiting for something, looking very strange. Jingdian was a little puzzled, but the little demon girl told him not to make a sound and to